Cuyahoga County Public Works Procurement and Contracting Committee meeting for Wednesday, June the 14th, 2023 will be called to order. Roll call, please.
And just as a reminder to all who are in attendance, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the county's YouTube page. Calling the roll, Mr. Tuma.
Here.
Mr. Miller.
Here.
Ms. Conwell. Ms. Conwell is absent at the moment. Mr. Sweeney.
Present.
Ms. Turner.
Here.
There is a quorum.
Okay. Is there any public comment this morning?
No, Mr. Chair, no one is signed in.
Okay, thank you. And could I have approval of minutes from the May 31st, 2023 meeting?
So moved.
We
Second.
have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. And Madam Clerk, if you could have the first matter referred to committee read.
Resolution number 2023-0157, making an award on requisition number 12375 to Shermer Construction in the amount not to exceed $8,281,397.65 for rehabilitation of Warrensville Center Road Bridge number 05.92 East and 05.92 West over Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority.
Okay, and if you could just state your name for the record.
Nicole English with Public Works. So this is a construction contract award that came in with 2 bids, and we are selecting the lowest and best bid, which was 8.36% over the engineer's estimate. This project is actually 2 bridges that are side by side. So in that section, that they split going northbound and going southbound over the railroad tracks, which is why, part of why the cost is so high, because it is 2 completely separate bridges. This project initially was funded with just county funds. We put it out to bid once last year, and the bids came in significantly high, and so we had an opportunity to go to the County Engineers Association. They had some additional funding that has come through the latest federal rounds of funding, and we applied and did receive federal funding for about 43% of the project. So then we rebid it with the federal funding, and now we're presenting that to you today. They set a DBE goal at the state level. We don't use our county goals with the federal funds. It was 10%. They are hitting that, and we're asking for approval.
Okay, what's the estimated start and completion dates?
So the estimated start was showing July 3rd. So if we ask for second reading suspension, we probably will be close to that, and it would go 2 years of construction.
Okay.
So likely the last year and that early 25 would be cleanup stuff, but the road will be open after that.
Is the road going to be open throughout the construction?
I believe the road is, we're shifting them, so we'd go onto one side of the bridge and then work on the other one and shift them back.
Okay, and then what was the alternate line item that was included in the submissions for the bids? Because was this a part of the package that was included in?
Yeah, so the alternate, it was an upgrade of some kind of, I think, fencing or guardrail. So it was an upgrade that was requested by the city. And so we actually bid kind of the base, and then they bid the alternate. And if we can afford it, we award with the alternate in. And so that is the item we are picking to select. So it's just relative to a type of material.
Okay, and then what's accounting for such a high cost on this? So this is pretty high for bridges.
Everything is high these days, but no, it is 2 bridges. So it's almost like doing 2 separate bridges. And costs are just going up. Working over the RTA is super complicated, right? They have to coordinate with the RTA. They have to pay them for flagging services during the whole process. And steel is high.
Mm-hmm. Okay, appreciate it. Questions from my colleagues?
Yes, I have a few.
Okay, Mr. Miller.
Mr. Chairman, Nicole, how did the bids that you received this year compare with the bids that you received last year?
I don't know exactly what the bids were last year. We did up the estimate a little bit in order to make sure that we could cover it, and we talked to them last year about how high they were going to be. But I do think they're not, it was inflationary numbers, but it wasn't significantly above last year's. However, last year's we would have had to fund completely out of the county and issue one. The lucky part this year is now we can get that federal money to cover some of that. But I can get you the number exactly. I'll pull those last year numbers.
And why do you think you only got 2 bids on a major construction project?
People are really busy right now. So ODOT has let a good amount of projects out. They had a couple big ones on the street at the same time we were bidding this project. And so I think until companies knew if they got some of the ODOT work, they weren't willing to bid. We actually opened a bid a couple weeks ago where we only got one bidder, which that followed the first time that it got no bidders. So that was a second attempt at bidding. So we're seeing less and less competition. I think we are also hearing from the contractors. They think our numbers are pretty tight on the cost estimate. They know we can't award over 10% over the estimate, and they feel like our costs are, we're not giving them a lot of room. So if they're busy, this project is complicated, so if it's complicated and they don't really want to take the risk and there's not a lot of profit margin in it, they're just not interested in it, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Miller. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, since you're looking at a July 3rd, I think you said?
Yes,
date,
correct.
And you're requesting second reading suspension, I'll make that motion on R 2023-0157. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to move R 2023-0157 on for second reading suspension. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, and the ayes have it. All right, thank you. And Madam Clerk, the next piece of legislation?
Resolution number 2023-0158, making an award on requisition number 12193 to C&K Industrial Services in the amount not to exceed $3,991,950 for cleaning and televising sanitary sewers in various communities.
So this is the item, again, Nicole English with Public Works. We've asked to stay in committee, and we will present it next time with some further information, if that's okay.
Okay, I have no objection to that, and we'll hold this. And
Before you hold it,
yes, Mr. Miller has a question.
I would like to ask a question, which is, how many bids did you get on this one?
On this item, two.
Two.
Two, but the second one was higher and over the acceptable amount to award. They were compliant. They were granted a good faith waiver and were compliant. However, their cost was over the value that we could award to the second bidder.
And is there a dispute on this item?
So we want to go back and talk to C&K a little bit about their diversity plan and just make sure that we feel comfortable with what we're ready to present to you guys.
Okay, fine, thank you.
All right, thank you. That's why it's being held, I assume.
Correct.
Okay.
But it is an important service that we provide to the cities, which we are currently out of contract. So that's why we want to talk through kind of options opposed to totally rebidding and taking, 3 months or so to get back to you.
Okay. All right, I appreciate it. We'll revisit that when you're ready. Next up, we have, thank you, Ms. English. Next up, we have discussion regarding the Energy Participation Program. We have, if you could just state your name for the record, Mr. Reimer.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. Matt Reimer, Facilities Design and Maintenance Administrator for the Department of Public Works. And I have a presentation coming up. This is an update on a transaction that we briefed you on the RFP results on back in February, but now I'm presenting the actual executed agreements for the electric supply contracts that we presented to you back earlier. So I'll go through the presentation. I like to, whenever I give these energy participation program briefings, I like to start with this slide just because we don't do this often and it's a good refresher. So just as you may recall, we established this program back in 2019 under county ordinance for our participation in the County Commissioners Association of Ohio Service Corporation's Energy Participation Program. And so for all of our First Energy electric accounts and all of our building natural gas supply accounts, there are agreements that CCO periodically puts out for proposal, aggregates with other counties, and also then executes the agreements on our behalf. And part of what I need to do is pre-brief you before those transactions occur, like I did on this transaction back in February, and then after those agreements are executed to give you the results. So today I'm here to present you with the 2023 electrical supply contracts that were executed on April 11th of this year after the refresh. So this is what I presented back in February. This slide We had conducted an RFP with the CCAO. 37 accounts were on that, and they gave pricing for various terms from 12 to 36 months in the initial RFP results. We took an extensive review of the accounts that were listed, and we added 2 accounts in particular, the recent acquisitions of the 2020 Lakeside Men's Shelter building that's currently under construction, that account, as well as the 3950 Chester property, which will be the new home of the Veteran Services Commission post-construction. So before the refresh, CCAO, Palmer Energy, who I'm joined with today, Mr. Kirkland Mazurek, who you know, we added those accounts to the refresh. And I also presented last time on a special topic about the complexities of the Justice Center. So coming out of that briefing, we did formally add the Justice Center complex to the pricing mix for the refresh to see what the results would be so that we could avoid the much publicized rate increases that were hitting residential and commercial customers this month. And as always, as we have always done with these electrical transactions, we requested pricing on 100% renewable energy credits. So again, just for the record, these were the recommendations that I gave back in February, that we would consider both the 24 and 36-month source, that we would add the 2 accounts, and we would concur with the recommendations of the pricing structure that CCO had recommended would be priced in the refresh. Okay, so fast forward to April 11th, CCAO, Palmer Energy conducted the refresh, and I'm sorry, before I get to that slide, these are the major accounts, just as a refresher, that are on this particular set of account contracts. The animal shelter out in Valley View, the Harvard Yard in Newburgh Heights, and downtown, the Convention Center and the Hilton Hotel are on this account as well. And as you'll see in my results, we do now have the Justice Center back under this program too. So on April 11th, these were the pricing results. We asked for pricing for 2 different projects, call it. A 24-month term on the Justice Center account, and you can see that's the summary table of the 3 pricing proposals from the 3 shortlisted vendors. And then all the other 39 other accounts are in the second table. The bottom table is the summary of both the 24-month term and 36-month term and the annualized value of those requests. And so the recommendation, in addition to reviewing the terms and conditions that led up to the draft contracts that these vendors provided to the CCAO and to the county for the law department to review, ended up with a recommendation and moving forward with Freepoint Energy as the lowest and best provider. And so we now have a executed agreement with Freepoint for a 24-month term for the Justice Center account and the 36-month term for the other accounts. Just to explain a little bit of the difference in terms, we worked extensively with our law department and sustainability department director, Mike Foley, on the term for the Justice Center to make sure that it was one that would be acceptable to our other coordination efforts with microgrid and our CPP efforts on the other energy supply contract with CPP. So we thought that was the best medium and the best term length to proceed with. So that's why there was a difference in term between those 2 accounts and thus 2 separate agreements. I'll just pause there and see if there are any. That's really the major results slide. I have a couple other talking points, but I think maybe this is a good point to pause and see if there are any questions.
Just to clarify, this is something we've done for the past how many years?
So yes, and that's something I'm going to get to also, because 2019 was when we put this program in place, but we've participated in the program since 2015. So, and Palmer Energy has estimated that our electric savings over that period of time, not including the savings I'm going to get to for this next contract, is over $1.3 million over our participation years, and for natural gas, over $1.5 million in estimated savings by use of the program.
Okay. I'll open the floor if you can take any
Yes.
questions, Mr. Miller.
Yeah.
So, Since we have two separate contracts, why didn't we do Freepoint on the Justice Center and BP on the other accounts?
So we already have multiple electric supply contracts. Our solar PPA, that sustainability put in place, our electric supply agreement with Cleveland Public Power, and we felt that the complexities of adding two different suppliers underneath all of our First Energy accounts was too complex. Plus, there were also terms and conditions that were non-price related that were much more beneficial to Freepoint being the contract provider for both supply agreements, specifically consolidated billing with the CEI billing process. The other providers would have provided separate billing, which would have been resource intensive on the county to be able to accommodate both CEI bills and the electrical supplier bills, not consolidated with the utility. So those were some of the factors, non-price related, that led us to the approach to having Freepoint for both. I will say that when you map out the pricing over all the terms, the price totals for Freepoint and BP across the 2 years and the 36-month totals are exactly equal. So that's where the non-price related evaluation factors.
Are these prices fixed for the length of the contracts, regardless of any changes in market conditions that might occur during that time?
So I'm going to ask Kirk maybe to come up and clarify, but I'll do my best to attempt it, and he can correct me. The actual rate that is shown it's the capacity costs that are the variable, but those would be variable to each supplier.
And if you could just please state your name for the record. Thank you.
Kirk Mazarek, principal at Palmer Energy, but I'm representing the County Commissioners Association today on this. Matt, what you said was correct on it. The generation component is fixed for the complete contract, whether it's 24 or 36 months. The capacity component, which is much, much, much smaller than the generation component, that is a component that it is what it is. You're going to pay it regardless of what the capacity rates come back at through various things that are out there that are happening. So from that perspective, you have to pay that, but we can get you a spreadsheet of what that number is, but it's much less. It's less than 10% from what you're seeing here on that. And it just made sense to lock in the generation component because that's the vast majority of your electricity that we can control.
So I would like to get a report on the capacity costs.
I'll be happy to do that.
Okay. Thank you. And
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Councilman. Go ahead.
how do these costs excuse me. How do these costs compare with what a residential customer would typically pay? It strikes me as it's considerably less. Is that correct?
I'm sorry. I'll ask the expert to come up and answer that, Councilman. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, these are much more competitive than what the residential area is. They're a little bit higher priced on that, whether you're in a GovAg or wherever you're not. These prices are very good comparatively speaking to that. And a lot of that is to do with just the load profile of these particular facilities.
Uh-huh.
That's a big part of it, the size of the overall deal.
Okay, thank you.
I will say, tangentially related to that, Councilman, and as briefed to us by Palmer Energy, when we presented the RFP results of the initial pricing back in February, the new pricing that we got on the refresh date in April that resulted in the executed agreements was of a value of about $100,000 annually less than the pricing that would have been put in place in February. So we had a positive direction on the rates between the RFP results and the refresh execution date on April. So.
And one final question. How do these rates compare with the rates that we're paying in the contract that's currently in force?
So again, I'll ask Kirk to come up, but it's my understanding from my past briefing, which I have with me, we were higher than the previous term, just because of market conditions, and it was on the order of just shy of $1 million annually was the estimated increase from last contract to this contract based on market conditions.
He says, we can also get you a report on that, Councilman, if you'd like us to put something together on what the differences are. But there have been significant, as we all know with everything going on these days, significant changes over the course of the last 3 years, and pricing for electricity has risen substantially. So it is different on that, but we can get you an actual report on that as well with the capacity report.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You want to just
Okay.
proceed then?
Yes, I'll proceed. Hopefully. Sorry. Sometimes that has fun connecting. Thanks, Janine. Not sure why that's not. Thank you, Janine. I appreciate that. So my only remaining talking point is to your question, Mr. Chair. We put this program in place in 2019, at least the current form of it, as documented in the ordinance and now in Code Section 806. So that has an expiration of that authority in 2024. We do not expect any other major transactions on the natural gas or electric side before that time. The ones that I presented for natural gas back in February will go beyond that date, as will these electric agreements that I'm presenting today. So we look forward to working with the Law Department and this committee on moving forward beyond 2024 on how this program looks and our participation in it. That would be my recommendation anyway, but we'll work with staff and everyone on the future.
Okay. At this point, is there anything further that council needs to do with respect to this program? Are we just set until we hear from you again?
We are set now, Mr. Chair. We will be, again, putting probably forward, it'll be an actual piece of legislation, I would envision, that would reauthorize our participation in the program beyond the documented August 2024 date.
Okay, I'll open up if there are any other questions before you end. Okay, seeing none. All right, thank you, Mr. Reimer. Appreciate
Mr.
that.
Chair.
And Madam Clerk, I think that we have one other presentation. Correct? Oh, and,
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Again, Matt Reimer with the Department of Public Works. You may recall back at this committee back in April on an item that Ms. English was presenting, Councilman Miller asked a few questions about the COVID-19 building modifications program and resulted in a recommendation for a follow-on brief. So this is my attempt at briefing you on the results of that program, looking back in hindsight, and happy to take this any direction that you'd want, fast, slow, or otherwise more follow-ups if I didn't give you what you needed. But so I look forward to presenting this to you. So as I prepared for this and looked back, I could tell that we had several distinct, I'll call it phases of this program. There was the one that I think most of council knows quite well, and that was the building modifications program that we did under 2 master contract solicitations with various design build contract providers that had resulted in 2 contracts worth as much as not to exceed $15 million each to perform COVID-19 building modifications. So that was the main contract push. But we also had other items that we accomplished during the pandemic with CARES Act and now with ARPA as well. So in other phases, we did some specific line item projects that were outside of that master contract building modifications program. I'll go through those a little bit. And we also had a significant public works response just with our own trades and workforce and how that looked. So I'm going to present a little bit on that to give you the the 30,000-foot level on those things. And also, we then transitioned after CARES Act was expiring and ARPA came in. We do have several projects that are under execution now that do have ARPA components, and so I will present those to you as well. Feel free to interrupt me anytime if you have any questions. So on the first phase, as I call it, for our building modifications program, we presented two pieces of legislation back in the middle of 2020. The Phase 1 master contract was executed in June of 2020, and our Phase 2 master contract was executed in August of 2020. We had 8 design-build contractors under each of those master contracts, but we only had 14 that ended up participating. 2 of the Phase 2 contractors dropped out just because of their business decisions that they made not to participate. Overall, in that program, we completed 63 projects across county facilities. The completed value of those projects was, you can see it on the slide there, just almost $17.6 million was the executed value of those projects. We also had program costs that were funded by CARES Act that supported that program. Hill Construction was our, R.L. Hill is a contractor that was, Hill Construction was our construction project manager that managed all the construction activities for all these different projects going on over the course of a little more than 12 months. So it was a really condensed and highly active period of construction. We also had criteria architect services from 5 of our general architect and engineering firms that put out the 35% designs to each of these design builders, and that totaled just over $1 million. So we had a total program expense of that CARES Act program of $19.6 million of projects that were complete. And I'm going to describe what those projects were here in the upcoming slides. Staying a little bit more on the program overview of this, the second slide, all the charts to the left of the page were what our Hill Construction team documented as the overall diversity participation across all those 63 projects. And this is for all prime and subcontractors. So we had a total of 60% diversity participation when you look at all categories of minority women or small business entities, 56% of SBE participation, 50% MBE participation, and 25% WBE. Not shown on this slide, we also documented how many of the project contracts that we issued, project tasks that we issued under the master contracts, how many of those were awarded to a contractor with a diversity, that was a diversity prime contractor of any category. And we had over 50% that were awarded to the prime contractor was the entity with the minority women or small business entity diversity classification. So we were quite proud of that particular matrix, in addition to what we normally see is a lot of subcontractor participation that makes up that diversity percentage as well. So that was an exciting matrix for us. On the right, it gets into, I looked at all of our projects and put them into 4 categories, and you can see where we spent the money. We spent 7% of the project dollars that were executed. I'm sorry, let me flip my page. On various entrances and atrium alterations. I'll get to a slide of what that shows, what that looks like. We also did 24% of the work on restroom automation or plumbing system enhancements, water fountain automation, exactly water bottle fillers, that kind of infrastructure. 32% was on office alterations or communication systems. So altering the configuration of offices to separate people or put up barriers for people. Great examples are in this space right now. The dividers between council members now, the electronics packages that resulted in individual monitors at your workstations, the system behind the scenes that the clerk runs, all part of that program. In addition, the entire Microsoft Teams network systems that run in the conference room in this building. We're all part of that 32% of project, and things like it in other county office buildings throughout our facilities. But the biggest slice of the pie was our HVAC modernization program. We worked hard with our consulting engineers, and the types of things that we did there, I'll show you some visual evidence of it, but we really went to what were the emerging industry recommendations, and we increased all of our filter sizes for all of our air handling units. We installed, where possible, bipolar ionization systems. That's a system that charges the particles that move through the air handling system, make them combine and then fall out of the airstream. And then we also installed UV treatment systems, ultraviolet light treatment systems in our air handlers that actually cleaned the air supply going into our buildings. So that was the major expense on a lot of our work. We also rebalanced all of our air handling systems that we touched in this program to make sure we were getting the right amount of air, increasing our outside air input per recommendations that were emerging at the time, and those systems are still in use today. So that's where the money was spent, just on a high level. I'm going to go through a few slides now, just show some of the example project pictures. This is in the first category for our building entrance modifications. In the center picture, we did a lot of temperature screening. As you know, we had temperature monitors that helped screen any entrance to our buildings. We modified building atriums for traffic flow. In the Justice Center, we set up various court check-in stations so that we didn't have people just freely going up the court's tower. They needed to check in and get their notice of where they needed to go, and control people in the atrium before they went into the building. And we also provided level of protection and seclusion for our security staff that were monitoring people coming in all day long. And we did some hands-free technology at the Justice Center and Juvenile Justice Center for the entry doors that were coming in. So those were some of the example projects we did in that entry and atrium category of project. For office alterations, which was the next biggest slice, a lot of public-facing interactions is where we addressed that work. The far left picture is where we renovated the probate court public transaction counter to make it safer to be able to engage the probate court for both public and employee. Same thing with domestic relations on the far two pictures. The middle left picture is an example of out of juvenile court where we just had a condensed workforce that had to be there. So we added partition heights into our existing furnishings to provide additional separation of employees that had to be at work and continuing to work through the pandemic. The next big category of project was our restroom automation. We automated sinks, automated toilet fixtures. We provided standard and automated soap dispensing stations and paper towel dispensers as well, eliminating nearly all of our hand blower units that at the time were very frowned upon given their ability to spread air and water droplets during the pandemic. So that's where we went with this program. And then, as mentioned, with our HVAC modifications, you can see two examples. That's in our Justice Center, specifically over the Courts Tower, one of our 24th floor air handlers. That's an example of the UV treatment array that is in the large air handling unit. All the air that goes into the office buildings starts on the outside of the building, comes in, gets treated by things like that, and filtered, and then distributed throughout the building. So those are obviously still in place today, treating our systems. And then not much to look at, but the picture on the right, there's a blue ion bar in there. That's the bipolar ion system. And again, it just creates electrical charge that allows things in the airstream to combine and fall out versus get distributed further down. So it prevents contaminants from going further down the airstream. So those are the kind of projects that we did with the major master contract building modifications program. I've got other things to present, but that may be a good pause also if there are any questions on, because that was the biggest piece of the program.
Sure. I got excuse me, I got a question. Number one, as far as the modifications went, did you leave it up to the contractors to decide what was good for preventing transmission of disease, or was this something that the federal government provided guidance on, or the CDC, or what? How'd you end up deciding that?
Right, so not the contractors, but it was with the emerging guidance coming, HVAC is a good example. ASHRAE, which is the industry standard group, the American Society for Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning Engineers, ASHRAE publishes all their standards that are then typically adopted by building codes, in our case, Ohio Building Code. So they were promulgating emerging guidance. I wouldn't say standards, but they were promulgating guidance through the pandemic. We leaned on our consulting engineers and architects for what to do. So it wasn't the contractors. So that $1 million that I said we spent on criteria architect services, that's what they were doing. They were analyzing our buildings, recommending from an engineering or architectural perspective what we should be doing with the guidance that they were seeing in the industry, and then creating a 35% design package that then our construction master contract providers would then build. I hope
So
that answers your question.
Washroom facilities, restroom facilities, and HVAC systems, I would assume continue to this day and will continue to prevent, spread of, as best they can, disease and such. But these building modifications at the entrance alteration, like some of these, have they been taken out of place? Because I don't see, screening anymore for temperature and things like that. What has become of those monitors and things like that, and can they be used again, or would they have to be new ones in the event we had, God forbid, another pandemic or something?
Right, so we have not completely removed all of the temperature screening monitors, as an example. Some are just offline, not in use, still at the security station. Some have been secured, but we do need to have an end-of-life or transition discussion on those monitors. As of this point, they can still be used. We have fixed temperature monitors in various locations at the Justice Center, within the jail, that still have operational value, but it is not a requirement for entering the buildings anymore. So we do have a inventory of those that we should figure out how to either preserve for redeployment, which they can be redeployed if and when needed.
And then as far as entranceways,
Yes.
or maybe you'll get to this, I don't know. Were there any modifications made to doors, automatic doors, as opposed to manually open doors?
Correct. We do have some wave to open technology that we put on the lakeside entrance to the Justice Center and the main entrance to the Juvenile Justice Center. Those systems remain in place, although from a security perspective, the Sheriff's Department is not choosing to operate the one on Lakeside, but we are in use on the one on Juvenile Justice Center. We have removed a lot of plexiglass. We have a healthy stockpile of plexiglass built up for reuse in other projects in the future, or redeployed if ever needed. Things like the stands that are next to you, Mr.
Right.
Chair. But a lot of the things that we did in our atriums weren't a lot of heavy construction. They were more circulation patterns and wayfinding and guiding tape to separate people in their circulation to other places. We have since removed that tape and things and those labels,
Right.
Sometimes to the detriment of our carpet systems. But so that's the type of effort that we've pulled back from.
Any questions from my colleagues up to this point? Mr. Miller?
So, I know this is going to be somewhat of a swag, but what's your best estimate on what percentage of the work that was done was a permanent installation that is useful on an ongoing basis, and what percentage were temporary installations that are in the process of being taken down, mothballed, or otherwise not currently being used?
Through the chair to Councilman Miller, I would venture my best estimate standing here before you today that for sure, roughly 70% are permanent, permanent fixtures. And that's just the rounding up, 69% on my chart of just the HVAC and restroom modifications. All those projects are fully in use today and benefiting occupants of our buildings and the public today, in addition to getting us through the pandemic. I would say that of the remaining 31% of work, which was the entrance I'm sorry, I misadded up my categories. It's 51% are the restroom and HVAC modifications. So over half are in, for sure, permanent full use. The remaining 39% of 39, yes, 39, no. It was 61%, forgive me. 61%. Engineer doing quick math, not a good thing. Okay, 61% of restroom and of the program was restroom and HVAC modifications, and that clearly is there. The remaining 39%, I'd say roughly half of that portion of the work is still in use. Our furniture modifications that we've done through various health and human services buildings and the clerk's office, the court system, all those office alterations remain in place. Where we have partition systems like here for council members, we have removed a lot of those systems. We have removed all of the systems that we put in place in the courts, in the actual courtrooms. But I will say, though, I'm about ready to get to that. That wasn't effort that was part of this program. It was part of our trades effort in response to the pandemic, which is another category of work. So that was a long way of saying my guess would be somewhere between 60 and 70%, Councilman.
Okay,
Actually,
thank
closer
you.
to the 70%, I'd be my estimate.
Okay.
I can do a better job of having a more educated dialogue on that, though, in the future.
Given that this ended up being an expenditure of 19 million out of an originally authorized number of 30 million, are there things that you wanted to do that didn't get done?
So yes, I was going to close with that, but I will get to that now with that question. Thank you. So what we did at the end of the program, and I think you have to look at the context of what was happening with CARES Act at the time. 2020 CARES Act came along. We did this program, started work in the summer of 2020. We're running at breakneck speed all late summer and fall, all staring down an expenditure deadline of the end of 2020, if I recall correctly, for the original CARES Act authorization. So, and it was also my recollection that the federal extension of CARES Act expenditures didn't get authorized until very late December of that year. So there were some decisions that were made probably mid-fall where we said, okay, this is the project, we can't start any additional initiatives. And so that's what resulted in the 63 and 17 million of active work, $19 million program. That's what defined that, really was that pace of when was CARES Act ending. Now, what the CARES Act extension did allow us to do was the projects that we did not finish, we were able to complete those to completion. But those were ones that we had started that were already part of the program. We were able to pay all the bills through, I believe it was May of 2020 when we finally closed down that portion of the program. So to your question then, we did have then a list of initiatives, some of which were things that didn't play out to be needs, but we did have a list of projects that we thought were ongoing needs that we represented for our ARPA project consideration. And I will say that of those 7 projects that we prioritized, on our facilities list. One of them was approved on the administration's ARPA project. Another one was, and that was the men's shelter project. I'll get to that, but that wasn't carried on our list. That was carried on the Department of Health and Human Services list. And at least one other project, excuse me, two other projects of the 7, which was a $6 million total. Of those 7 projects, one was funded by ARPA, one is being done by agency funds at a smaller scope. And the other one, Ms. English answered correctly to your question back in April, and that was the animal shelter multi-purpose room expansion project. That was one that we had in the program, and it is now being, we've got appropriations from other funding. Some of it from District 11 ARPA, some of it from General Fund Reserve, and also a lot of it from private donations. So so of the 7, 3 are already moving forward. So we have 4 others that we'll attempt to work into our capital planning.
So of the 3, it's the animal shelter and the men's shelter was one, and what was the third one?
So the men's shelter, I mentioned because that's a major ARPA project that we're executing, but it was not on our list. That was on the HHS list. So the 2 others were the jail security network establishment. That's a $500,000 appropriated ARPA project that we're near completion on. The analogy I like to use for that project is you have a data system in the jail, and it was full. It was a highway, a single highway that was full of truck and car traffic. We provided new fiber optic cabling throughout the jail facility, and that separated, my analogy, the truck traffic from the car traffic. So it allowed the jail to operate their normal data systems while providing a security network that operated all the access control and digital high-quality cameras that are going in there, and took all that network capacity off of the data network. And that allowed the jail to do what they need to do, expand their Securus phone technology and their commissary technology in the jail through wireless networking. Also provided their ability to do additional remote hearings and at additional locations to increase their capacity there. That was a $500,000 initiative under ARPA, and that's near completion. The second project was an alteration of the ground level of the Virgil Brown building, the superior entrance, which better aligned how they wanted to see client services. Actually, we just had a Board of Control item that approved about $25,000 worth of furnishings that would facilitate that. So that project, we changed the scope a little bit, and the agency funded that.
So, Mr. Chairman, I just want to close by saying that that I think this was a very successful program, both in terms of what you accomplished and in terms of the procurement process, which achieves some of the highest diversity numbers of anything that we've done. And I know that that there was a fair amount of stuff in the press criticizing this program, and I felt that that response was very much unjustified. That you did a lot of work. You involved a lot of people. It brought new people into the county bidding process. You completed things that needed to be done, and you did them quickly. And I think a lot of good work was done here.
Through the chair to Councilman, thank you, Councilman. I'd like to piggyback on that one comment that it did bring new contractors in that hadn't previously done county work, and they have since bid our work, our normal appropriation work since then. So it has helped our competitive approach to procurement as well. So.
All right, thank you, Mr. Miller. All right, you want to just continue?
Yeah, I'll try and speed through since I think we talked about most of these things. But the next slide, we had 2 line item projects funded by CARES Act outside of the master contract program. You may recall it was the $1.3 million Harvard Yard PPE storage facility, 6,000 square foot addition out at Harvard Yard that is run by Justice Affairs and Emergency Management Team, and that's where all the PPE for the county is now stored, and that's the contingency storage area for emergency operations. And we also did a clean rail project renovation at the 12 escalator systems in the Justice Center, UV technology treatment, and on all of our handrail systems for the those 12 escalators. That was $332,000, I think it was. I have it up there. $334,200. So those were the two line item projects that we had. And then I mentioned our public works response. That was an estimated nearing $4 million effort when you consider all the salaries and materials purchased, but all CARES Act funded, I believe. But these are some of the examples where we set up courtrooms for operations, modified our atriums in some buildings, and a lot of things, just everything that this other program wasn't covering, our trades were there to support.
Okay.
And then lastly, the 3 ARPA projects that I mentioned, the men's shelter expansion, which that's the picture on the left, not much to look at, but what you're looking at is the framed interior of one of the new housing pods that would be in there for the 88 beds that we're building the capacity for. Project's going along real well. I invite anyone that is interested, that wants to make a site visit, we can arrange that. We're expecting before winter to have occupancy into that addition. And then the rendering on the right side of the animal shelter addition, which is the addition to the left of the main circular structure, that's at the main entrance. That's the addition that'll be added to provide for additional capacity for programming, training, and other things that the current facility does not allow, especially since we took a lot of the interior up with building realignment with the pandemic. And that's my slideshow. So happy to answer any further questions if there are any.
Okay, just last question is, are there any deadlines that have already passed for CARES or ARPA that you can, as far as use of the funds, are those passed, or are they still time to use some of the funds, or?
I know we're not currently managing any CARES Act projects right now, so I don't know the exact nature of CARES Act. And I don't know the specifics of ARPA, but we're well within the ARPA spending limits. I want to say ARPA is through next calendar year, if not into 2025, but I can confirm that and get back to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right, I'd appreciate that if you could get us an answer on that, if there's any outstanding projects that are due or need to be done before the deadlines, that's all.
Mr.
With that, Mr. Miller?
I would just bring to attention that on ARPA, there's basically no deadline, because we're able to characterize all the money as lost revenue and spend it that way and move it into the general fund. So although we have money that's still identified as ARPA money, it's not under the federal deadline. And if that had not been the case, the deadline would have been the end of calendar year 2026.
Through the chair to Councilman, thank you for that reminder. I will confirm it, but I believe both the men's shelter project and the jail IT security project are in that category of general fund revenue loss from ARPA. But I believe that the District 11 component for the animal shelter is ARPA dollars. So I'll confirm that and get back through staff to you on that question.
All right, thank you very much. Any other questions from my colleagues? Okay, seeing none, I appreciate the presentation, and like Councilman Miller said, a lot of good permanent work that was done through the county, and I think a lot of good choices were made there, and helping to look forward to future prevention of any issues that we have with respect to pandemics or any other type of virus that's out there. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Any other miscellaneous business before the committee this morning? I want to thank my colleagues for sitting through this these presentations and asking good questions. And with that, I will make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion to adjourn we have a motion to adjourn. All those and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. And Public Works will adjourn